I thought the worst thing a man could do was break my heart, until he reappeared years later, smiling at me from across the dinner table, as my daughter's fiancé. He didn't come back for love. He came back for revenge. But he forgot, my daughter was raised by me. You ever feel your heart stop beating, not from fear, not from pain, but from something far more vicious, recognition? That's what happened to me the moment I saw him walk through my front door. My daughter, Emma, had invited someone special to dinner. "You'll love him, Mom," she said with a sparkle in her eyes that reminded me of her childhood. "He's everything I've ever wanted." And like any mother desperate to believe her child is safe, I wanted to believe it too. I set the table, poured the wine, even lit the candles. I thought I was preparing for an ordinary evening. But nothing about that night was ordinary. The man who stepped inside, holding my daughter's hand, was no stranger. He was the ghost I had buried a decade ago. His name was Ethan. My ex. The man I had once loved so fiercely it nearly ruined me. The man who left bruises I had to explain away as clumsiness, who whispered promises with poison in his mouth. I hadn't seen him in 13 years. Not since I packed my bags, grabbed my daughter's tiny hand, and ran like hell. I should have known he'd never truly let go. But this? Marrying my daughter? No. This was no coincidence. It was a dagger, polished and deliberate, aimed straight at the part of me that still bled. He didn't flinch when he saw me. Not even a blink of surprise. Just that same chilling smile I once mistook for charm. "Claire," he said smoothly, like we were old friends. I stood frozen by the kitchen island, my hands wet from rinsing salad greens, the faucet still running. Emma beamed. "You two know each other?" she asked, laughing as if she'd made a funny connection. Ethan answered before I could breathe. "We've met. Long time ago." And just like that, my past was sitting across from me at the dinner table, cutting into roast chicken and sipping Pinot Noir like it was communion. I barely touched my food. My stomach twisted into knots with every word he said. He spoke gently to Emma, touching her hand like a lover, smiling like a man in love. But beneath the surface, I could feel it. The game. The trap. This wasn't love, it was war. I saw the way he watched me when she wasn't looking. Like a wolf studying the last piece of its prey. Every toast he made, every compliment, was laced with venom. And Emma, sweet Emma, soaked it up with wide eyes and a glowing smile. After dessert, I excused myself and stumbled into the laundry room, gasping for air. My fingers trembled as I braced myself against the dryer. My mind spun, why now? How? What does he want? I didn't hear him come in. But suddenly, he was there, standing behind me like a shadow that never left. "You didn't think I was gone forever, did you?" he whispered, voice low and cruel. "You took everything from me, Claire. Now I'm going to take everything from you, one piece at a time." I didn't answer. I couldn't. My legs felt like sand. My voice like dust. I just stared at the monster I once loved, realizing the truth: he hadn't come back to win my daughter's heart. He came to break mine. But he forgot something. I've survived him before. And this time, he's not the only one with a plan. If this story shook you, even a little, don't scroll away. Please like, share, and subscribe to support more stories like this. And tell me, where are you watching from? I'd love to know. The morning after that dinner felt like waking from a nightmare you wish were still a dream, because dreams, even the dark ones, eventually end. But this? This was my new reality. My ex, the man who once called me worthless between kisses, was now my daughter's fiancé. And he had slept under my roof. With her. The hallway was quiet when I crept past Emma's room that morning. Her door was shut, her laughter muffled behind it. And then I heard his voice. Calm. Controlled. That same voice that once made me feel safe, before it turned into something sharp and cold. I stood there for a moment, hand pressed against the wall, staring at the grain of the wood. Just listening. Just trying to breathe. He was telling her he loved her. That he wanted forever with her. And I, her mother, knew exactly how long his version of forever could last. My fingers curled into fists. Not because he fooled her, but because he was good at it. He had always been good at pretending. But what scared me more than anything was this: what if Emma wasn't pretending? What if she loved him? What if she already believed in the fantasy he was building for her? Later that day, I tried to talk to her. Just the two of us, over coffee at the little cafe down the street, the one with the chipped mugs and the cinnamon biscuits she used to love as a child. She wore that same soft green sweater from when she was 16. The one I bought her after a breakup. My heart ached just looking at her. I said gently, stirring my untouched coffee, how did you meet Ethan? Her face lit up. Oh Mom, it's so wild. It was at the bookstore near campus. I dropped a novel, one of your old favorites, Wuthering Heights, and he picked it up. We just clicked. Like he knew me already. He did. Because he knew me. I forced a smile, but something inside me cracked. He's older, I tried carefully. Does that bother you? No, she said, a little defensive. He's mature. Safe. Different from the guys I used to date. Safe. That word stabbed me. I wanted to scream that she had no idea what that man was capable of. That he was never safe. That the only reason he knew Wuthering Heights was because he once threw it at me during a fight. But instead, I nodded. I sipped. I swallowed the truth, again. When we got home, he was waiting. Not for Emma, but for me. She had gone upstairs, humming softly, and he appeared in the kitchen doorway like a curse I thought I'd outrun. You look tired, Claire, he said, mock concern in his voice. Memories catching up to you? I didn't answer. But my eyes didn't flinch. Why her? I asked flatly. Why my daughter? He smiled. Because I knew it would break you in places you didn't know still existed. And because she's beautiful. Just like you used to be. I slapped him. Hard. The sound echoed like thunder in that silent kitchen. He didn't react. Just tilted his head and said, you'll regret that. She's already mine. And that's when I knew, I had to protect Emma. Not just from him, but from the version of me that used to believe love meant survival. Because if I stayed silent now, I wouldn't just lose my daughter. I'd lose myself all over again. There's something deeply terrifying about watching your daughter fall in love with a lie, especially when that lie once lived inside your own body like a poison you tried for years to purge. The days after that confrontation blurred into a cruel performance. I played the role of the accepting mother. I smiled when Ethan entered a room. I nodded when Emma shared wedding plans. I even helped her choose flower arrangements, all while my hands trembled beneath the table. I told myself I was doing it for her, to stay close, to stay vigilant, but part of me hated myself for not screaming the truth. For letting that man walk through my house like he belonged there. It wasn't until I saw her trying on wedding dresses that I truly felt my composure begin to unravel. She twirled in white satin, radiant, glowing, a young woman on the brink of her future. And behind her, in the mirror, stood Ethan, watching me instead of her. Smirking. That smile that once told me I was his whole world, even as he tore it apart behind closed doors. What do you think, Mom? Emma asked, spinning in front of the mirror. Is this the one? I swallowed hard. My throat felt dry as dust. You look breathtaking, I managed to say. She ran into my arms, laughing. He's going to cry when he sees me walk down the aisle. I just know it. And all I could think was, so will I. I had to do something. If I couldn't tell her outright, because she wouldn't believe me, not yet, I had to find proof. Real, irrefutable proof that Ethan wasn't who he pretended to be. But how do you expose a master manipulator without becoming his next victim? I started small. I searched his name online, scanned through social media, ran background checks. He had covered his tracks well. Too well. No social profiles. No digital traces. No past relationships, at least not recorded. It was as if he had scrubbed his own existence clean before re-entering ours. Except for one thing. An old photo. Buried deep in a forgotten folder on my old hard drive, taken the summer before I left him. There we were, standing in front of a lake cabin. Ethan, his arm around me. Me, smiling, though I looked tired even then. But it wasn't the photo that caught my attention. It was the date. And the necklace. The exact necklace I saw Emma wearing 2 nights ago. It was mine once. A birthday gift from Ethan during our first year together. A twisted little reminder that his manipulation often came wrapped in velvet boxes. I had thrown it into a donation bag years ago, never wanting to see it again. How had he kept it? Or worse, how had he given it to her? My stomach churned. I printed the photo and tucked it into a folder labeled garden plans. Then I drove to the one place Ethan would never think I'd go, his mother's nursing home. She was a frail woman now, trembling with age and time, her voice barely a whisper when I sat beside her. But her mind, oh, her mind was still sharp. "You should have buried him," she said without emotion when I told her he was back. Some men don't deserve second chances. Some mothers don't deserve sons. I asked her why he hated me so much. What he wanted. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "He wants to make you feel what he felt when you left. Powerless." "But he has my daughter," I whispered. Her voice cracked with something like sorrow. "Then he already won." But not yet. Not while I still had breath left in my body. That night, I sat alone in the dark, the photo clutched in my hand. Ethan might think he was the only one playing a long game, but he had forgotten who raised Emma. I may have been broken once, but I had stitched myself back together, sharper, smarter, more dangerous than before. He wanted revenge. I wanted justice. And now, it was time to start hunting for his cracks. It started with something small. It always does. A missing bracelet. That's what Emma came to me about one rainy afternoon, her voice light but her brows furrowed. "Have you seen the gold one? The one Ethan gave me for our anniversary?" she asked, tugging open drawers in the hallway like the answers might leap out at her. I told her no, and she shrugged it off, said maybe she left it at the gym or a cafe. But something lingered in her eyes, like doubt creeping in through a crack she hadn't noticed before. I didn't say anything then. I didn't want to push too soon. But inside me, hope sparked like a stubborn ember. Maybe she's starting to see him for who he is. Later that evening, I watched from the kitchen window as they returned from a dinner date. Emma walked a few steps ahead of him, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. He was speaking quickly, with that familiar intensity one remembered too well, low voice, firm gestures, the illusion of calm that could shatter in a heartbeat. She didn't look back at him once. My breath caught. Something had shifted. The next day, Emma came to me again. This time, her voice was lower. "Mom, can I ask you something?" I nodded, trying to keep my expression open. "Did you and Ethan ever know each other before?" she asked, eyes narrowing just slightly. I felt my heart stutter. This was it. The edge of the truth. I chose my words like glass, fragile but deliberate. "A long time ago. Before you were old enough to remember." She looked at me hard. Did something happen? I wanted to scream yes. I wanted to tell her everything, the yelling, the gaslighting, the bruises I hid under long sleeves, the nights I locked myself in the bathroom while he whispered apologies through the door like a serpent coiling around my mind. But I also saw the little girl in her eyes. The girl who still believed in love. The woman who hadn't yet realized she'd been groomed by a man who made himself out of mirrors. So instead, I said, he wasn't who I thought he was. She looked down. Sometimes. I don't think he's who I thought he was either. There it was. The fracture. That evening, I walked into her room while she was out and searched the top drawer of her nightstand. My hands trembled with guilt, but I told myself this was for her. For us. Buried beneath lotion bottles and love letters written in Ethan's familiar handwriting, I found something that didn't belong, a burner phone. Cheap, plastic, and blinking with unread messages. It wasn't hers, of that I was sure. Emma had no reason to hide anything like this. And yet, there it was, glowing like a warning light in the dark. I opened the texts. Most were from unknown numbers. Short, clipped exchanges. Payment confirmed. Room is ready. No names. No paper trail. But one message stopped me cold. It was from Ethan. Sent 2 weeks before they even got engaged. She'll fall fast. Just like her mother did. It's already working. My legs gave out. I sat there on the edge of her bed, phone clutched in my palm, bile rising in my throat. He had planned this. All of it. It wasn't a twist of fate or a strange coincidence. He had studied Emma like a blueprint. Rehearsed the seduction. Calculated every word, every touch. And now? I had proof. But I couldn't go to Emma with it yet. Not like this. She had to see it herself. She had to feel the betrayal as truth, not suspicion. So I copied every message. Took photos. Backed them up. Then I put the burner phone back exactly where I found it. And waited. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing a mother can do, is let the truth catch fire in its own time. There are moments in life when silence becomes louder than any scream, when a single look, a single hesitation, speaks a language more dangerous than words. That moment came the following Friday, during what should have been an ordinary afternoon. Emma had gone out early for errands. Ethan thought he was alone. But I was home. And I was watching. I stood behind the half-closed hallway door, just outside the study. He was on the phone, his voice low, impatient. I didn't catch the beginning of the conversation, but I heard enough. No, she doesn't suspect a thing, he said. The wedding's still on. Of course I know what I'm doing. Her mother's already cracking. You said to get close. I'm closer than ever. There was a pause. Then, don't call this number again. Not unless it's urgent. I heard the soft click of the burner phone shutting, the one I'd discovered in Emma's drawer. He had moved it. Or maybe there were more. My pulse pounded in my ears. I pressed my back against the wall, holding my breath as he walked past me moments later, whistling like a man with nothing to hide. But this time I wasn't the only one who heard him. That evening, while I was folding laundry in the back room, Emma came in. Her face looked flushed, distracted. Mom, she asked quietly, do you think Ethan's ever lied to me? I set the towel down slowly. Why do you ask? She chewed the inside of her cheek. Because I saw something weird today. At the florist's. He was outside on a call. He didn't see me come back. I only heard a few words, but he was saying something about timelines and resetting expectations. It didn't sound like anything to do with the wedding. I stayed still, watching her carefully. And how did it make you feel? She looked up. Her eyes, once full of conviction, now shimmered with quiet uncertainty. Like I'm missing something. Like I'm the one in the relationship, but someone else is pulling the strings. I walked over and took her hand in mine. I believe you. I always will. She hesitated before whispering, I love him, Mom. Or. I thought I did. But now I don't even know who he is. And there it was. The unraveling. That night, after Ethan went to bed, I found Emma in the kitchen, scrolling her phone in silence. I need to ask you something, she said, not looking up. When you said you knew Ethan, what did you mean, really? I sat down across from her. The light flickered above us, casting shadows on the kitchen tiles. I meant, he's not who he pretends to be. He hurt me, Emma. A long time ago. In ways I never told anyone. I left him to protect you. Her lip trembled. So it's true. I reached into the drawer beside me and pulled out the printed photo. The one with the necklace. The timestamp. The damning evidence she couldn't ignore. I slid it across the table to her. Her fingers hovered over it, hesitant, then finally gripped the edges. Her voice cracked. He told me he bought this necklace new. Last month. He didn't, I said gently. He gave it to me when you were still learning to walk. Emma's face turned pale. Her fingers shook. And then, for the first time since this nightmare began, she said the words I'd prayed to hear, I think he's been planning this for years. You don't forget the first time your daughter looks at you, not as her mother, not as her safe place, but as her equal. That moment came when Emma clutched the old photo, her face a mask of disbelief melting into something sharper, colder. How long? She asked. How long has he been doing this? I told her the truth. Since the day I left him. Maybe even before. The next morning, we didn't speak much. We didn't need to. There was an unspoken understanding between us now. He was the enemy, and we were no longer his pawns. We were the players. Emma went about her usual routines. Smiling at Ethan. Texting him sweet little nothings. Letting him think she still believed in their future. But every time he left the room, her smile vanished. And her eyes, God, those eyes, burned with questions. We began quietly. Emma pretended to forget her phone in the room while he showered. Left a voice recorder running on the nightstand. I taught her how to clone files onto a flash drive without leaving a trace. We even planted a tiny tracker in his car, something I'd once used when I feared he was cheating on me back in the early years. He hadn't changed phones, but we discovered something else, a second email account. Registered under a fake name. Hidden in the bookmarks of his laptop, one click away from secrets we were desperate to see. We stayed up until 3 a.m. the first night, digging through messages. It was all there. Plans. Journals. A digital diary of manipulation. One entry read, Phase 3, win the girl. Phase 4, destroy the mother. Slowly, publicly. Make her beg. Make her break. Another one, Emma is easier than Claire ever was. She trusts. She worships. Just a matter of time now. Emma didn't cry. Not once. She just read in silence, her jaw clenched tight, her knuckles white on the edge of the desk. He studied me, she said quietly. Like an experiment. And I nodded, even though every part of me screamed. Then she turned to me and whispered, I want to be the one to end this. From that moment on, we weren't just mother and daughter anymore. We were two women, wronged. Two women reclaiming power. We began collecting. Screenshots. Voice memos. Videos. We used one of the home security cameras to catch him pacing in the living room while muttering things like, stupid girl, just like her mother. Emma left out a printed guest list for the wedding and caught him scribbling notes in the margins, names with checkmarks, excess beside others. When she asked about it, he said, just organizing the seating chart. But I knew that look in his eyes. It wasn't about placement. It was about control. Calculation. He had always been playing chess. But now we were flipping the board. Emma suggested we wait until the rehearsal dinner. He loves an audience, she said bitterly. Let's give him one. She was right. If we struck too soon, he'd slither away. But if we let him think he'd won, let him believe he'd crushed both of us, we could detonate the truth in one beautiful, public explosion. We had 1 week. 7 days of pretending. Of smiling. Of letting him believe he still held the strings. 7 days of tightening the noose, one silk thread at a time. And Ethan, poor Ethan, had no idea that the women he thought he broke were building his downfall, stitch by stitch, in the quiet shadows of his illusion. Ethan once told me that control isn't about violence. It's about knowing what someone will do before they do it, and staying one step ahead. I remember that chilling conversation like a scar that never healed. What he didn't know was that now, we were the ones predicting him. His routines, his triggers, his tells. He thought he'd memorized us. But what he didn't realize was that we'd changed. We weren't women who needed to be rescued. We were architects of ruin. The wedding countdown had officially begun. Emma pretended to go dress shopping. She smiled for selfies, tagged him in posts, posted captions like "1 week until forever red heart." She played her role so well it terrified me. But at night, we whispered plans like conspirators in a heist. The trap we were setting wasn't just for him, it was for everyone who ever believed his mask. For every friend of his who thought he was charming. For every guest who would raise their glass at the rehearsal dinner without knowing the truth. We agreed that would be the night. Not the wedding. Not the honeymoon. The night before, when he'd be full of confidence, surrounded by admiration, standing tall on the brink of a victory he didn't earn. That's when we'd strike. But first, we had to push him. Make him cocky. Make him show his true face, just enough to tighten the emotional vice. Emma started pulling away, but not too far. She pretended to get nervous. "Maybe we're rushing into this," she told him one evening. "I mean, a wedding's a big deal," and just as we expected, Ethan's reaction wasn't concern, it was rage buried under fake sweetness. "Don't be silly," he said, brushing hair from her face. "You're just scared of being happy. Like your mother. Don't let her poison you." When she repeated that line to me, I flinched. He was already trying to separate us. Divide and conquer. Good. That meant he was losing control. We gave him just enough rope. I encouraged Emma to ask uncomfortable questions. "Where did you grow up again? What exactly do you do for work? Why aren't there any pictures of your family?" Each time, he grew tighter, tenser. He'd snap, then apologize. Snap again. And every time, Emma recorded it. Screenshots. Audio. Silent proof of the pressure cooker building inside him. One afternoon, she came home with a bruise on her wrist. Just a thumbprint. But it was enough. "He grabbed me," she whispered. Then said it was my fault for making him upset. I saw red. I almost ended it that night. I almost drove to his apartment and dragged the truth into the light with both hands. But Emma stopped me. "Not yet," she said. "He has no idea I'm already gone. That's the only advantage we have." She was right. She was stronger than me. That night, we finalized the rehearsal dinner guest list. We sent out printed menus with beautiful cursive font. We arranged the seating, his closest friends in the front, his few remaining colleagues beside them. I booked a private dining room at a winery just outside town. And in the center of that polished, candlelit room, we planned to deliver our masterpiece. Proof. Photos. Audio. Emails. Messages. A digital confession stitched together from the very traps he thought he'd laid for us. Emma would stand up and make a toast. And then, she'd end the performance, with every eye on him. By the time the rehearsal dinner was 2 days away, I could feel the energy shift. Ethan, once so confident, so polished, had started to unravel. Not publicly, not yet. But in private, the cracks had begun to show. He paced more. Checked his phone obsessively. Snapped at Emma for things as small as undercooked pasta or too much perfume. But always smoothed it over with that oily charm. "I'm just stressed, babe," he'd say, kissing her forehead. "Big events do that to me." What he didn't realize was that he was the event. And we were the ones preparing the stage. That morning, Emma came to me while he was out finalizing the wine list. She held up a folded napkin, on it, a list of names written in Ethan's handwriting. Most of them were familiar, people from his past. But next to each name was a symbol, a check mark, an X, or a dollar sign. "What do these mean?" she asked quietly. I didn't know. But we were beginning to. The deeper we looked, the more we realized, he wasn't just trying to destroy us emotionally. He was playing a much bigger game. One that included manipulation, financial fraud, even blackmail. That same day, I got a call from an old friend of mine, Marjorie, a retired paralegal who once helped me file a protective order against Ethan. Her voice was cautious. "Claire, I just got a very strange message from someone claiming to be you. Asking for old court documents. But the number was unfamiliar." My blood froze. Ethan was trying to erase the past before we could expose it. I thanked her, hung up, and then I went to Emma. We sat at the kitchen table, the sunlight pouring through the window, but neither of us felt warm. "He knows something's off," I said. "He's trying to cover his tracks." Emma didn't flinch. "Then we strike sooner. I won't wait for him to touch me again. Or you." She stood up, went to her bedroom, and returned with a small black box. Inside it were 2 flash drives, each one identical. "One goes in my purse," she said. "The other? We leave in plain sight at the dinner. If he tries to grab it and run, the guests will see. They'll ask questions. And when they ask, we'll answer," I finished, tears stinging my eyes. That night, Ethan came home late. His shirt was wrinkled, his tie loosened. He reeked of whiskey and desperation. "Big day coming up," he mumbled, dropping his keys. "You ready to be my wife?" Emma smiled. A smile so good, so perfect, I nearly forgot it was a mask. "More ready than ever," she said. But I saw her hand curl into a fist behind her back. She was holding the napkin. The list. She'd kept it close. Like ammunition. The next morning, something strange happened. A delivery arrived at the house, no name, no sender. Just a box wrapped in crisp white paper. I opened it while Emma was upstairs. Inside was my old wedding photo. Me and Ethan. Cut into pieces. With a note that read, "You always liked puzzles. Let's see how fast you put this one together." I felt the blood leave my face. He knew we were closing in. And he was lashing out. But what he didn't know was that this time, I wasn't alone. He didn't just underestimate me. He underestimated the daughter he tried to destroy just to get to me. And in 2 days, he would stand before a room full of witnesses. And fall. The day before the rehearsal dinner, the air in our home shifted. Not a storm, not a scream, just that eerie, brittle quiet that comes before something snaps. Ethan was unusually still. No pacing, no fake smiles. He moved like a man watching shadows, unsure which one might leap at him. It was the first time I had ever seen fear on his face. Not because he thought he was in danger, but because he was beginning to suspect he wasn't in control anymore. He didn't say much to Emma that morning. Barely kissed her cheek. And when she asked him if he wanted to go over the seating chart one last time, he shrugged and muttered, "What's the point?" It was so unlike him, I knew something was coming. My instincts were screaming. So I followed him. Not openly, just as I used to, when I feared the man I loved might be someone entirely different. I watched from the corner of my car as he pulled into a shady little building on the edge of town. Not a bar. Not a florist. A print shop. 10 minutes later, he emerged with a brown folder clutched tightly in one hand. When I returned home, I found Emma in her room, rehearsing her toast. Her voice shook, but her hands were steady. "He's going to regret ever choosing me," she whispered. "He thought I was his weapon, but I'm the fuse." I nodded, proud and heartbroken all at once. "Stay sharp, Em." I followed him today. He picked something up, documents, I think. He's preparing for something. We didn't have to wait long to find out what. That evening, just as dinner was starting, a knock came at our door. Emma and I exchanged a look, neither of us expecting anyone. Ethan was upstairs, taking a shower. Emma opened the door. A courier stood there with a clipboard and an envelope. "For Ms. Claire Bennett," he said. I signed, took the envelope, and shut the door. Inside was a single page. A printed screenshot of a bank transfer from my account, except it wasn't mine. It was fake. A forged document showing thousands of dollars funneled to an offshore account. The note attached read, "Getting desperate, Claire? Accusing me of fraud while hiding your own? Careful. I know more than you think." I felt dizzy. It was a move straight out of Ethan's playbook: discredit, confuse, intimidate. If I exposed him first, he'd point to this as proof I was covering up my crimes. But it was sloppy. Too fast. Too easy to disprove. He was unraveling. Emma stared at the paper and didn't even flinch. "He's going to try to ruin your name the way he tried to ruin my trust," she said. "But he's slipping. You said it yourself, he's never sloppy." She was right. This wasn't a power move. It was panic. That night, as we sat at the kitchen table reviewing our plan, Ethan entered silently. His hair still damp, shirt unbuttoned. "You both look like you're plotting a coup," he said with a forced smile. "Should I be worried?" Emma leaned forward and tilted her head with perfect calm. "Only if you have something to hide." He paused. For just a split second. And that pause, it told me everything. "I think tomorrow's going to be unforgettable," he said. "A night none of us will ever forget." He was trying to intimidate us. But his voice cracked at the edges. And that's when I knew. He could feel it. The walls closing in. The light shifting. The stage tightening. And when he stood at that dinner, expecting to bask in adoration, he'd drown in truth instead. I've always believed the most dangerous kind of storm is the one that arrives beneath a clear sky. That's what the evening felt like: bright candles, polished glasses, music humming like laughter in the background, and all of it perched on the edge of destruction. The rehearsal dinner was being held at Willowbrook Vineyard, one of those elegant countryside estates where everything smells like oak and illusion. The staff wore black. The guests wore smiles. And Ethan wore confidence like a tailored suit. But I watched him closely. Underneath it, his jaw was tighter than usual. His smile never reached his eyes. He knew something was coming, he just didn't know from where. Emma looked like a bride out of a dream. Hair pinned back in soft waves, her dress simple but elegant, like she belonged in a painting. If you didn't know the truth, you'd think she was in love. If you looked too close, though, you'd notice the difference. The way her hands never touched Ethan's. The way she tilted ever so slightly away when he whispered in her ear. And the way she kept checking her clutch, the one with the flash drive inside. The dinner began with polite conversation. Toasts. Laughter. People clinking glasses, sharing stories. Ethan worked the room like a campaigner, hugging old colleagues, charming my sister, even joking with Emma's childhood friends. I sat at the far end of the long table, watching him like a hawk. Every move. Every smirk. Every time he reached for his wine, I imagined what was about to hit him. Halfway through the evening, Emma stood. The room quieted. Her fork tapped gently on the side of her glass. "I'd like to say something," she said, her voice light, smooth as honey. Ethan turned, proud and expectant, his arm draped behind her chair. He had no idea. "I want to thank everyone for being here," she began. "I know weddings bring out the best in people, and sometimes, the truth in people, too." A light ripple of chuckles moved through the crowd, unaware of the tension sitting just behind her words. "When Ethan and I met," she continued, "I thought I had found someone kind. Someone honest. Someone safe." Ethan's smile grew, then faltered slightly. His eyes flicked to her hand as she reached into her clutch. But the last few weeks have shown me that love isn't always what it looks like. Sometimes, love wears a mask. Sometimes, love tells lies. There was a shift. Subtle, like a single string snapping beneath a violin. She pulled the flash drive out slowly, holding it up like a jewel. This contains every email, message, and recording you've sent to people who never knew they were part of your game. Including me. Her voice didn't shake. I know you lied to me. I know you lied to everyone here. The room fell silent. Ethan stood slowly. Emma, he said, voice low, what is this, some joke? She didn't blink. Does it look like I'm laughing? I rose from my seat then, stepping forward, the second flash drive already in hand. It's not just her, Ethan, I said, voice like ice. It's both of us. He turned pale. His fingers curled into fists. You're insane. No, I replied. I just remember everything. I handed the second flash drive to the venue's AV tech, who had been briefed beforehand. One click, and the projection screen flickered to life. Emails appeared. One after another. She'll fall fast. Just like her mother. Make her mine, then crush them both. Claire was weak. Emma's weaker. This time, I'll finish the job. Gasps spread like wildfire. Whispers turned into murmurs. Murmurs into judgment. A woman in the back covered her mouth. Ethan's own best man backed away from the table, jaw clenched. Someone muttered, what the hell is this? Ethan's voice rose, desperate now. This is fake. They're lying. But no one was listening. Emma stood taller than I'd ever seen her. You didn't just manipulate me. You planned to destroy us, for what? Revenge? Ego? She turned to the room. He came into my life to hurt my mother. He made me fall in love with a lie. And I believed him, until now. Then she turned back to him, fire behind her tears. You thought I'd say I do. You thought I'd be another Claire. But I'm not. I'm me. And I'm done. Ethan looked around the room, no allies left. Just silence. And judgment. And truth. He tried to speak. But the room had turned on him completely. Like predators scenting blood. And that was the moment he realized, he hadn't just lost control. He'd never had it to begin with. He stood there like a statue cracking at the edges, Ethan, the master manipulator, the confident puppeteer. But now his strings lay severed, his smirk gone. And the room? The very audience he thought would adore him, toast him, praise him, now stared as if he were diseased. The silence wasn't soft. It was cruel. Cold. Complete. I watched his throat bob as he tried to swallow the panic rising behind his lips. For a second, he looked at me. Not the way a lover looks at an old flame, but like a man drowning, hoping the woman he once tried to kill will throw him a rope. I didn't. I can explain, he began, voice cracking. No, Ethan, I cut in, calm but lethal. You explained yourself already. In every message. Every lie. Every whisper we recorded. Emma stepped back from him, like he was toxic. The distance between them, physical and emotional, felt final. Emma, he begged, voice desperate, don't throw this away. They're manipulating you, your mother, she's always hated me, because I knew what you were, I interrupted, eyes blazing. And now? So does everyone else. His friends stood. Slowly. One by one. First Peter, the groomsman who once called him a brother. Then Allison, the bridesmaid who looked ready to slap him. Even the owner of the venue stepped forward. I think it's best you leave, the man said sternly. This is a private event. And your presence is no longer welcome. Ethan's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The control he'd clung to like armor was gone. And under it? There was nothing but dust and anger. He grabbed a wine glass and hurled it at the floor. It shattered into glittering shards. "This isn't over," he screamed. "You think this is justice? You think you win because you embarrassed me in front of some strangers?" "No," Emma said softly. "We win because we finally stopped you." Security escorted him out. Just like that, Ethan was gone. But his shadow? His echo? It lingered. The room stayed hushed for another long minute, until someone, a friend of Emma's, stood and clapped. Slowly. Deliberately. Others followed. It wasn't joyful applause. It was solidarity. Understanding. And something else, respect. Emma and I stood together, still reeling. She took my hand, her fingers warm but trembling. "I don't know what to do now," she whispered. "You just did the hardest part," I replied, squeezing gently. "The rest is healing." The guests eventually dispersed, stunned and rattled. Some hugged Emma. Others left in silence. No one asked questions. The truth had already screamed louder than anything we could say. Later, after the cleanup, Emma and I sat in the now empty vineyard dining room. Candles still flickered. Plates sat half full. The bouquet centerpieces looked strangely untouched, as if they, too, had held their breath during the storm. She looked at me. "Do you think he'll try to come back?" "Yes," I said honestly. "But he won't get far. Not this time." We'd already submitted the digital evidence to the police. Fraud. Identity manipulation. Emotional abuse. Enough for an investigation to begin. And more importantly, enough for a restraining order. But that night, as we drove home, Emma reached into her bag and pulled out the necklace he had given her, the same one he once gave me decades ago. She looked at it, then opened the window and tossed it into the dark. Gone. Like him. Like everything he thought he could take from us. You'd think that when a man like Ethan is exposed, publicly humiliated, stripped of control, abandoned by his inner circle, he'd crawl away and disappear. But manipulators like him don't vanish. They regroup. They come back uglier. Smarter. Meaner. And sure enough, within 48 hours of the rehearsal dinner, Emma received a letter. It wasn't handwritten. It wasn't emotional. It was legal. A cease and desist. Accusing her, and me, of defamation, slander, and emotional distress. I read the letter 3 times before I even blinked. The words were carefully chosen, typed in a clean serif font, delivered via courier like a grenade with a wax seal. Emma held it with shaking hands. "He's trying to sue us?" "No," I said, my voice dark. "He's trying to scare us." And it might have worked, once. Before she knew the truth. Before she saw his face twist at the dinner table when the walls came down. But this time Emma didn't cry. She didn't break. She smirked. "Let him come," she whispered. "We still have more to show." I contacted my friend Marjorie again, the retired paralegal. She reviewed the documents carefully, scanned the email trails, and said flatly, "He has no case. You have digital proof, verbal admissions, and public witnesses. If he pushes this to court, he'll lose. Badly." But Ethan never relied on truth. Only fear. What he didn't expect, what I didn't expect, was that someone else had been watching. And waiting. Her name was Madeline. She contacted me through a mutual friend from Ethan's old workplace. Her message was brief: "I know what he did to you. He did it to me, too. Can we talk?" My hands trembled as I dialed her number. She answered on the first ring. "Claire?" she asked. "Yes." "Are you okay?" She laughed, but it wasn't joy, it was relief. "I'm finally ready to stop being quiet." We met the next morning. A quiet cafe. She looked nothing like I expected, confident, tall, sharp-featured, mid-40s. But behind her eyes was the same haunted exhaustion I once carried. She slid a folder across the table to me before we even ordered coffee. Inside were screenshots, letters, and voice recordings. Ethan had dated her after I left him, but before he found Emma. He'd promised her marriage, love, a future. Then slowly, he pulled the rug from under her feet. He isolated her. Used her money to open fake accounts. Vanished the week before their supposed wedding. She never reported it. I was embarrassed, she said. He didn't just fool me. He studied me. Like I was an experiment. I looked at her, stunned. He did the same thing to my daughter. He learned her fears, her dreams, then became exactly who she wanted. Until she gave him everything. She leaned forward. He needs to be stopped. And that's when the idea formed, slow, electric, undeniable. A joint statement. 2 women. 2 victims. Both with proof. We decided to go public. No more hiding in kitchens and courtrooms. No more secrets buried in USB drives. We'd tell the truth, together. That night, Emma uploaded a video to her private account. A simple sit-down recording. No filters. No background music. Just her face, tired and brave. This is for anyone who's ever been charmed, gaslit, or used, she began. My name is Emma Bennett. I was engaged to a man named Ethan Cross. What I didn't know was that he used to date my mother, and came back into our lives to destroy us both. She recounted it all. Calm. Honest. Powerful. And then Madeline's voice joined in. 2 women, back to back. Truth layered over pain. Justice layered over memory. By morning, the video had over 300,000 views. By noon, it hit 1 million. People started sharing their own stories. Others came forward. And Ethan? He went silent. No statements. No lawsuits. Just silence. But we weren't done yet. Because silence is not surrender. And sometimes, the most deafening response to a manipulator is a united voice saying, "We're not afraid of you anymore." They always come back. It's something Madeline said to me after our video went viral. These men, she told me, they can't stand the sound of their own silence. Eventually, they tried to reclaim the story. And Ethan? He wasn't the kind of man who disappeared when the curtain dropped. He was the kind who clawed his way back on stage, even if it meant bleeding in front of the audience. But what he didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that we had planned for that. The video reached over 2 million views within 72 hours. News outlets picked it up. Online forums lit up with rage. Women everywhere saw themselves in Emma. In me. In Madeline. And Ethan? He went underground. Deleted accounts. Locked down his phone. But we heard whispers, he was angry. Humiliated. Dangerous. We knew he'd try something. The only question was, what? The answer came 5 days later, in the form of a visit. He showed up at Emma's apartment. Unannounced. Unhinged. She called me the second she heard the knock. He's here, she whispered. He's banging on the door. He's saying he wants to fix things. I told her to stay calm. Stay inside. Do not open the door. I'm calling the police, I said, grabbing my keys with one hand and the pepper spray with the other. But Emma, my brave, brilliant girl, had already planned for this too. The doorbell camera we'd installed 2 weeks ago captured everything. The pounding. The yelling. The way he pressed his face against the glass and hissed, "You think the world believes you? You think you can destroy me and walk away?" What he didn't know was that the video streamed live to our cloud backup, and that Emma had already hit record on her phone, just in case. I loved you, he shouted. And your mother ruined that. She ruins everything. That was it. That was what broke the mask. Not Emma. Not the exposure. Me. He still hated me more than he loved her. The police arrived just as he tried to jimmy the lock. He panicked. Ran. But he didn't get far. The cruiser caught him 3 blocks away, barefoot and breathless, with Emma's name still on his lips. They found a USB drive in his pocket. Another list. Another plan. This time, it wasn't just about us. It included names of 2 other women. One of them was already dead, suicide, 3 years ago. The other? Madeline. He'd been watching her too. When she heard, she broke down. I thought he'd forgotten me, she sobbed. But he never forgets. He stalks. He stores. He waits. Not anymore. Because now he was being watched. Charged with harassment. Attempted break-in. Stalking. Evidence tampering. Fraud. The DA took it seriously. Especially once we turned over the burner phones, the emails, the video footage. But even behind bars, I didn't feel peace. Not yet. Because closure doesn't come from someone else's punishment. It comes from reclaiming your voice. That night, Emma and I sat in the same kitchen where it had all begun. She scrolled through comments on her video, thousands of them. Stories from women, men, survivors. You think he'll ever admit what he did? She asked quietly. I looked her in the eyes and said, he already did, sweetheart. To us. With every move. Every lie. Every email. He screamed the truth without realizing we were listening. She leaned into me then. Not as a victim. Not even as a daughter. But as a warrior. A survivor. And I whispered, he tried to ruin us. But he made us stronger instead. There are moments in a woman's life when silence is no longer an option. Sitting in that courtroom, watching my daughter prepare to testify, I realized this was hers. Her moment to look her abuser in the eye, not as a girl shattered by betrayal, but as a woman who chose truth over fear. The courtroom itself was quiet, almost sterile. Padded benches. Scuffed linoleum floors. A judge with kind but tired eyes. And behind the glass, the man who had once pretended to love her, now in a rumpled blue jumpsuit, cuffed and watching like a predator pacing behind invisible bars. Ethan. He hadn't spoken once since his arrest. No apologies. No denials. Just that sharp, unreadable stare. He didn't even blink when Emma walked to the stand. But I did. I held my breath the way I used to when she was a little girl climbing the monkey bars for the first time. I wanted to run to her, shield her, hold her hand. But this time, she didn't need me. She took the oath. She sat down. And she told her story. Not dramatically. Not theatrically. Just plainly. Truthfully. Line by line. How he pursued her with calculated interest. How he mirrored her hopes, her insecurities, her dreams. How he studied her. Gained her trust. Slipped into her life like a shadow pretending to be sunlight. And how, slowly, carefully, he chipped away at her until she no longer knew where he ended and she began. She spoke of the necklace. The messages. The burner phone. The moment she realized he had once been with her mother, and had come back not for love, but for revenge. There was a moment, still, sharp, when she looked directly at Ethan and said, "You used me to hurt the woman who raised me. But you forgot one thing. I'm her daughter." Gasps rippled through the room. The prosecutor rested her hand on Emma's shoulder as she stepped down. And then it was my turn. The judge called my name. My palms were sweating as I walked forward, but my spine was straight. I took the oath with a steady voice, and when I looked at Ethan, I felt nothing. No fear. No pain. Not anymore. I told them everything. How I met him. How he charmed me. How the charm turned to control. To threats. To bruises I lied about to my coworkers. I told them how I left with a suitcase and a daughter on my hip. How I thought I had escaped him, only to watch him reappear like rot beneath floorboards, smiling as he walked through my front door, hand in hand with my child. I didn't cry. I didn't need to. Because the truth was the weapon now. Madeline spoke next. Her voice cracked more than once, but she stood tall. She told the jury how he had stolen her money, disappeared before their wedding, left her broken and questioning everything. He's not a man, she said at the end. He's a performance. The defense? Weak. Their attorney stuttered through objections. Tried to claim coincidence. Emotional instability. Misinterpretations. But the evidence was undeniable. Screenshots. Emails. Audio. The jury sat stone-faced. The judge didn't ask a single question. After 3 days of testimony, the trial recessed before closing arguments. As we stepped outside the courthouse into the chilled afternoon air, Emma squeezed my hand. He didn't even look sorry, she whispered. He's not, I replied. He never will be. But then she asked something that stopped me cold. Will I ever stop feeling like he still owns part of me? I turned to her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. No, I said honestly. But that part shrinks. Every time you speak. Every time you choose yourself. Every time you say his name, and don't flinch. She nodded. Then tomorrow, I'm ready. Because tomorrow, we would return to that courtroom one last time, for judgment. And whatever the outcome, we had already won something Ethan never could, ourselves. There's a kind of silence that doesn't come from stillness. It comes from holding your breath, from every heart in the room pausing at the same time. That's what it felt like as we sat there, waiting for the jury to return. Emma gripped my hand tightly, her thumb tracing the back of mine. The bailiff stood stone-faced. The judge looked unreadable. Ethan sat across from us, hands folded, head down, not out of humility, but calculation. His lawyer leaned in every so often, whispering to him. But Ethan wasn't listening. His eyes kept flicking up toward Emma. And me. Not with remorse, but with something colder. Resentment. When the jury filed in, I saw it on their faces before a word was said. They didn't look at Ethan. They didn't look at us. They just looked forward. Ready. Sure. The foreman stood. We, the jury, find the defendant, Ethan Cross, guilty on all charges. Time didn't stop. It snapped. Emma let out a breath so deep it shook the entire bench. I felt her shoulders collapse, her body loosening from a tension she'd carried for too long. My eyes blurred. Not from sadness. From release. After everything, the lies, the manipulation, the shame, someone finally said, in a court of law, he did this. And it's not okay. The judge cleared his throat. Sentencing will take place in 4 weeks. Until then, the defendant will be remanded to county custody without bail. The gavel struck once, sharp, final. And still. Ethan said nothing. Until we stood to leave. That's when he rose from his seat, fast, just enough for the bailiff to step forward and grip his shoulder. And then he looked at Emma. No smile. No apologies. Just those cold, hateful eyes. You'll regret this, he hissed. Emma didn't even blink. No, she said. You will. He sneered. You'll remember me every time you close your eyes. I will, she replied softly. And I'll remember that I beat you. And that was it. They led him away, shackles clinking, jaw tight. The great manipulator, alone, exposed, undone. He didn't look back again. We stepped into the sunlight. It was cold, but golden. Bright. Like the world was trying to remind us we'd made it out of the storm. Reporters swarmed. Microphones in our faces. Questions we weren't ready for. Emma looked at me. Should we say something? I nodded. She turned to the cameras. My name is Emma Bennett. I spoke the truth, and the truth was enough. That night, we didn't celebrate. We didn't throw a party. We just sat in the living room, drinking tea in silence. Madeline joined us later. She brought cupcakes and a soft smile. To freedom, she said, raising her mug. Even if it tastes like peppermint and grief. I looked at Emma. And in her face, I saw something I hadn't seen in weeks. Peace. Not perfection. Not healing. That takes time. But peace. The first step. As I lay in bed later, I stared at the ceiling and whispered to myself, it's over. But I knew better. Because survival doesn't end with a verdict. Survival is waking up, choosing to live free, and never letting someone like him write your story again. And tomorrow? We'd start writing ours. Freedom is strange. You think it'll feel like fireworks or a deep exhale. But for us, it felt more like quiet. Unnerving quiet. No knocks on the door. No fake smiles at breakfast. No low, calculated voice twisting its way through the hallways of our lives. Just silence. And healing, slow as honey. Emma moved back into her old apartment the following week. It was the first time I'd seen her hang photos on the walls without fear, pictures of her childhood, a framed snapshot of her and me baking cookies, even a drawing she made in high school that Ethan once called pointless. Now it hung proudly above her desk. I want to look at something that only came from me, she said. Still, I could see the tension lingering. She flinched at sudden noises. She avoided certain songs, certain restaurants. Some nights, she'd text me at midnight, I know he's locked up, but sometimes I still feel him in the room. I'd always reply the same, that's the trauma, not the truth. You're safe. We both are. But the body remembers what the mind tries to forget. Then came the letter. It arrived on a Thursday. No return address. Just a plain envelope, slid under Emma's door while she was out. She called me right away. Should I open it? She asked, her voice tight. Not alone, I said. Come here. When she arrived, she looked pale. But steady. Together, we sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd planned Ethan's takedown. I slit the envelope open gently, half expecting a threat, a smear, something venomous. But what we found wasn't from him. It was from a woman named Rachel. Handwritten. Careful. Ink slightly smudged in places, like someone had paused often while writing. Dear Emma, I hope this letter finds you safely, and I hope it's not a boundary I've crossed by writing you. I watched your video. I cried for hours. Because I know him too. My name is Rachel Moore. I met Ethan, he used a different last name then, 7 years ago. I was 19. He was charming, older, intense. It felt like fate. It wasn't. It was grooming. I never knew what happened to him. He disappeared after I told him I was pregnant. I lost the baby. And a piece of myself. I never told anyone. Until now. Because you were brave first. If you're open to it, I'd like to talk. Not for revenge. Not even for closure. Just to share. To make sure he never hides in anyone else's life again. In strength, Rachel Emma read it 3 times. Then she folded it neatly and placed it back in the envelope. He didn't just do this to us, she whispered. He's left a trail. I nodded slowly. And now, the trail is finding its voice. Later that evening, Emma reached out to Rachel through a new email we created just for safe correspondence. She kept it short. Kind. Clear. Hi Rachel, thank you for your letter. Yes, I'd like to talk. I think we'd both carried silence for too long. Over the next week, the 2 women began exchanging stories. Not trauma dumping. Just connecting. Reclaiming. Every email felt like stitching torn fabric together, word by word. Sometimes they cried. Sometimes they laughed. I read pieces of it with Emma's permission, and I saw how even strangers could become lifelines when bound by truth. One day, Emma said to me, "I used to think I was the last chapter in Ethan's story. Now I know. I'm the start of something new." And she was right. Because exposing one man wasn't just about punishment. It was about lighting a path for every woman still lost in the dark. Rachel arrived on a rainy Saturday morning. Emma stood beside me at the window as the car pulled into the driveway, her arms folded tight, not from cold but from nerves. "What if it's too much?" she whispered. "What if talking to her just brings everything back?" I touched her hand gently. Then we breathed through it together. The woman who stepped out of the car wasn't the broken girl I'd imagined. Rachel was tall, pale, with cropped dark hair and sharp, haunted eyes that had clearly seen too much too young. She looked like someone who had rebuilt herself from glass shards and kept the cracks like trophies. When she stepped through the front door, Emma wrapped her in a hug. It wasn't awkward. It wasn't hesitant. It was something deeper, two souls recognizing the same wound. We made tea. No small talk. No scripted apologies. Just a quiet agreement to tell the truth. Rachel was 26 now. But she met Ethan, under the name Daniel Ross, when she was just 19 and working at a bookstore. He was older. Mysterious. The way he looked at me made me feel seen, she said. But I wasn't seen. I was targeted. As she spoke, the details echoed too closely to Emma's. The flattery. The fast connection. The love bombing. The subtle cutting away from friends and family. And then, Rachel said, he found out I was pregnant. Emma and I both leaned forward. "I was so scared," Rachel whispered. "I thought he'd disappear." But he didn't. He stayed. Just long enough to convince me he was excited. He even took me shopping for baby clothes. "And then?" Emma asked gently. "Then he disappeared," Rachel said. "No note. No calls. Just vanished. And 2 weeks later, I lost the baby." My throat burned. I wanted to reach across the table, take her hand. But she didn't need pity. She needed to be believed. Emma nodded slowly, tears welling. "That's what he does. He doesn't just ruin people. He studies them. Learns them. Becomes whatever they're missing." Rachel met her gaze. "And when he's done, he takes what matters and leaves them hollow." They sat together for hours, trading fragments of memory like puzzle pieces. And then, suddenly, Rachel said something that made my heart freeze. "He used to talk about someone named Claire," she said. "Always when he was angry. Or drinking. He'd say things like, 'Claire ruined me,' or, 'Claire thought she was smarter than me.' I asked once if she was an ex, and he just said, 'She took something I can't get back.'" Emma and I locked eyes. "I didn't know what it meant," Rachel continued, "but now I do." I felt something stir in my chest. Not fear. Not sadness. But something quieter, validation. He remembered me all those years. Not with love. With obsession. I had escaped him physically, but I lived in his head rent-free for over a decade. "He hated that you left him," Rachel said softly. "He didn't think women got to leave him." Emma sat up straight. "That's why he came after me. I was the next best thing." "No," I said, my voice clearer than it had been in days. "You weren't the next best thing. You were the only way he thought he could still control me. By controlling someone I love." The room was quiet. Rachel reached into her bag then and pulled out something that made my breath catch. A bracelet. Delicate. Silver. I recognized it. It was mine. "I found this in one of his boxes," Rachel said. "When he disappeared, he left everything behind. This had a tag with the name Claire written in pen." Emma took it gently. He kept it? I nodded slowly, stunned. It was a gift from my mother. I lost it after I moved in with Ethan. I always thought it was just misplaced. He'd stolen it. Kept it. Like a trophy. Emma set the bracelet down like it burned. We sat in silence for a long time after that. 3 women. 3 versions of the same pain. And then Rachel whispered, "Do you think there are more of us?" I looked at her. At Emma. And I said, "I don't think." I know. Sometimes the most painful truths come not in screams, but in whispers. After Rachel left that evening, Emma and I sat together on the living room floor, surrounded by open notebooks, highlighters, a laptop, and a stack of printed emails. For the first time, we weren't just survivors. We were researchers. Investigators. Architects of exposure. "I keep thinking about how many versions of him are out there," Emma said, flipping open Rachel's printout of Ethan's aliases. "He used Daniel Ross with her. He used his real name with me. Who knows what name he used before either of us?" I nodded, scanning a spreadsheet Marjorie had helped compile. Bank accounts. Shell corporations. Social profiles. Some long deleted. Some archived. All traced to one pattern: Ethan always left behind just enough to disappear. But now, he was in a cage, and we were outside, collecting every breadcrumb he thought we'd never find. Emma opened her phone. "Let's try something," she said. "Let's list every woman who ever seemed off around him. Quiet. Nervous. Disappeared without a goodbye." We started with the obvious: Rachel. Madeline. Emma herself. Then we dug into old photos. Party snapshots. Guest lists. Work events. That's when Emma pointed at a woman standing in the back corner of a 2016 holiday photo from Ethan's last job, barely visible, holding a glass, smiling softly. "Who's that?" she asked. I leaned in. And something inside me stilled. The name hit me like ice water. Alyssa Crane. Emma blinked. "You know her?" I nodded slowly. "She was my best friend. Back when I first started dating Ethan, before you were born." Emma's eyes widened. "Wait," she said. "You never mentioned her." "Because she vanished," I said. "We got into a small fight one afternoon. Nothing major. But I never saw her again after that. I thought she moved. Changed numbers. It never sat right with me, but I was so wrapped up in surviving him that I let her go." Emma stared at me. Rachel's words echoed in my mind: "He used to talk about Claire. Said she took something from him." I closed my eyes. "Oh my God," I whispered. "What?" "I think he hurt her. Because of me. Because she told me once that she didn't like the way he looked at her." Emma leaned back. "You think he targeted her because she questioned him?" "I think he wanted to erase the people who protected me." We searched for Alyssa online. No social media. No current address. An old LinkedIn profile last active in 2015. Gone. Erased. Just like the others. We kept digging for hours, piecing together fragments: a comment on an old blog post, a mention in an alumni newsletter. It took forever. But eventually, we found something. A review on a book about emotional abuse, left under the name Phoenix AC. The comment read, "When I left him, I lost everyone who didn't believe me. But I found something better: silence. Healing. And distance. But when I see stories like this, I know I'm not alone anymore. Keep going. Tell the truth. Burn it all down." Dated only 2 days after Emma's video went viral. See Alyssa Crane. She was alive. Quiet. Watching. Listening. "He knows she's out there," I whispered. "He probably thinks she'll never speak." Emma's eyes burned with quiet fire. But what if she does? We decided to write a public letter. Not just to Elpalla, but to all of them. We drafted it that night, to every woman who ever felt like you were crazy, overreacting, paranoid, or too emotional. This is for you. We see you. We are you. We've survived him. And now, we're exposing him. If he silenced you, come speak with us. If he vanished, we will find the pattern. And if you're still scared, you don't have to be alone. Our story doesn't end with him. It starts with each other. We posted it anonymously. Left our email. Shared it in survivor forums. Within 24 hours, 7 replies came. All with one sentence that shattered me: I thought I was the only one. Her email came at 2:12 a.m. I was awake. I don't know why, I hadn't been able to sleep much since the trial. Maybe my body was waiting for something, for her. As soon as I saw the name in my inbox, Elpalla Crane, my chest clenched. For years, I thought she had simply disappeared. Slipped away like a shadow into another life. But now I knew better. She hadn't disappeared. She'd been hiding. Just like I did. Subject: I saw everything, Claire, it's me. Elpalla. I've rewritten this message a dozen times. I don't know how to explain what happened to me without falling apart, so I'll keep it simple. He hurt me too. After you left him, he came for me. Quietly. Ruthlessly. He destroyed my job, threatened my family, made me question my sanity until I didn't recognize my own voice. I was too ashamed to speak. Too scared. But when I saw your daughter's video, I cried for hours. Because I finally understood it wasn't just me. He was always hunting in shadows. I want to help. I want to speak. You deserve to hear what he did. And I deserve to say it out loud. Tell me when and where. I stared at the screen until my eyes blurred. Then I woke Emma. She read it twice, her lips trembling. She's ready, she whispered. She wants to fight. We called Rachel. Then Madeline. And over the next few days, 5 women in total joined us, each with a version of Ethan that could break the soul. The stories were different, but the pattern was the same. Charm. Isolation. Control. Vanishing. Together, we formed a group. Not a support group. A justice league. Emma called it the circle. Because that's what we were now, a circle of witnesses, of warriors, of women who refused to stay quiet. Each woman signed a collective statement. Elpalla agreed to testify in the sentencing hearing. Her voice would be the final nail. The DA was stunned by the volume of victims we presented. This could turn into a federal case, he said. It's not just emotional abuse anymore, it's financial fraud, identity theft, long-term psychological manipulation. We knew. We'd lived it. The night before the hearing, we gathered at my house. The kitchen was filled with laughter, real, open, unafraid. Emma stood at the center, holding her mug like it anchored her to this new life. You know, she said, he thought he was the sun. That everything revolved around him. But he was just a black hole, Rachel said. Pulling everything into darkness. Elpalla smiled. And now we're the light. That night, we printed our statements. Every woman would stand in court. Not for sympathy. Not for tears. For reckoning. I sat on my porch afterward, watching the sky stretch into morning, thinking about how long I had let him live inside me. Ethan had wormed his way into the cracks of my memory, my trust, even my daughter's love. And for years, I thought surviving meant forgetting. But survival is remembering everything, and still standing. He thought we'd all stay silent. Stay scattered. But women like us? We find each other. We heal each other. And tomorrow, we would walk into that courtroom, not broken, not afraid. Whole. And together. Before we begin, if this story has meant something to you, if it echoed even a small part of your truth, please subscribe my channel. We tell these stories for those who've been silenced, for the women who were told to get over it, and for the daughters who fought to heal what generations before them endured. And I'd love to know, where are you listening from? Let's stand together. It was the first time I'd seen Ethan in weeks. He sat shackled at the waist and wrists, jaw tight, hair grayer than I remembered. Even from across the courtroom, I could see the puffiness under his eyes. This wasn't the polished predator who once whispered "I love you" while stealing everything I had. This was a man undone. Unmasked. And about to hear every secret he ever tried to bury come pouring back to life. The judge called the sentencing hearing to order. Then he invited the victims to speak. Emma stood first. No notes. No hesitation. "Your Honor," she said, voice clear, strong, "I was manipulated by a man who claimed to love me. He entered my life as a fiancé. But he was never here to marry me, he came to hurt my mother through me. He groomed me, studied me, used everything I shared in trust to twist and trap me. But I'm no longer that girl." She turned and looked directly at Ethan. "You taught me what a lie looks like when it wears love's mask. And I will never fall for it again." The judge nodded. Next was Rachel. Then Madeline. Each woman stood and peeled back the carefully constructed layers of Ethan's past. He kept his eyes on the floor. The man who once loved to perform couldn't lift his head. And then came Alyssa. I hadn't seen her since the night she emailed me. Now, she stood in court, trembling, but speaking. "I was 20 when he took my voice," she said. "But today, I take it back. He left me with scars no one could see. But I see them. And now, so do you." Finally, the judge called my name. I stood slowly. Years of pain and silence coiled inside me like a spring, but I didn't speak with rage. I spoke with truth. I loved a man who wanted to own me. When I left him, I thought it was over. But it wasn't. Because he came back, through my daughter. Through her innocence. Through her kindness. He tried to finish what he started with me by destroying her. And he almost did. I looked down at Ethan, who still refused to look up. But here's what he doesn't understand: he didn't destroy us. He forged us. My daughter and I are stronger. Closer. We've built something he'll never know: healing. I turned to the judge. I don't ask for vengeance. I ask for justice. So no one else ends up in that chair, questioning their reality. Their sanity. Their worth. The judge nodded. After a brief recess, he returned with sentencing. Given the pattern of psychological manipulation, financial deceit, and the credible testimony of multiple victims, this court sentences Ethan Cross to 13 years without parole, followed by mandatory rehabilitation and registration as a monitored high-risk domestic offender. The gavel came down. The room held its breath. And then, release. Emma grabbed my hand. Tears ran down her cheeks, but her eyes sparkled. "We did it," she whispered. "He's finally gone." "No," I said. "We are finally free." As we stepped outside into the sunlight, reporters circled, flashes burst, but we didn't stop. We didn't speak for the cameras. We didn't owe anyone anything. Except ourselves. That night, Emma and I cooked dinner together, like old times. Laughter returned. Light returned. Her smile returned. She showed me a notebook where she'd been writing. At the top of the page, it read, "When he tried to break us." I looked at her. "You're writing your story?" I asked. She smiled. "I'm writing ours. Thank you for listening to our story. If you've ever felt alone in your pain, know that you aren't. Comment below and tell me where you're from. Let's build something together. One story at a time. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe my channel. Your support keeps these voices alive. Until next time, stay brave. Stay seen. Stay loud.